Hi, this is Kokudo, and I'm back after a while with another Through the Ages video. Sorry for the delay in recording videos, but because of that delay, the first two 4-player games of my next World Championships round have finished, so I figured I'd go ahead and record them now. Thanks to Ruby Booby's fancy new Gleeko rating website, I can pull up myself and all of my opponents on the same page like this. And we can see that while I am technically the highest rated player in my group, El Chupacabra, another player, is very close behind me, only 5 places behind me, and DB Starman isn't that far behind either of us either. And Sakash19, while the lowest rated player in the group, has by far the fewest played games out of anyone in the group. So on the one hand, maybe that means they're inexperienced, but on the other hand, it could also just mean they're a very strong player who just hasn't played enough tournament games yet to get their rating high. So for that reason, this is looking like a pretty difficult group, as we can also see by looking at their results in previous rounds. Now, El Chupacabra is the seeded player in our group, so they did not play in previous rounds. DB Starman was seeded directly into round 2. We can see in round 2 that DB Starman won their group by 3 points. So maybe not as good as I did, but, you know, still won it. That's the important part. Sakash19, like me, was not seeded at all. So they played in round 1, which they won by 2 points with 26 points total. In round 2, Sakash19 actually ended up in second, though they ended up with 29 points. But there's actually a post in the Discord that explains why this happened. Because WH Svin, unfortunately, withdrew from the tournament, the second place finisher with the most points ended up getting to go to upper bracket, and that was Sakash19. So that's kind of interesting, or maybe amusing, at least to me. So that's sort of a quick introduction to the players, and without further ado, let's take a look at the first game we played. In this game I'm playing 4th. We can take a quick look at the leaders and wonders. In Age 4, there aren't any super clear synergies. The 2 power wonders, in my opinion, Hollywood and Spaceflight, are not in the deck. We don't have that many theater synergies in general, just Marlena. There's also a couple lab synergies, Marie Curie, Bill Gates, especially if you get them early, Sid Meier, maybe, especially with Internet. There's also Pierre with Internet, can be a strong combo, as well as Winston Churchill for military and Nelson Mandela as a more all-purpose leader, but no super strong synergies here in Age 3. In Age 2, we have a few. There's Railroad plus James Watt, which is always a good combo, Maria, but there are no other super strong Age 2 wonders in the deck, though, not Harvard College, Suez Canal, or Ocean Liner Service, which are the other power Age 2 wonders. As for other notable leaders, Napoleon, always a strong leader in 4-player games. Catherine also provides a military action. Antony Gaudi and Bach, maybe with some culture synergy, though again, not much payoff in Age 3, as well as Isaac Newton, a very strong science leader. Age 1, we have Jan Žižka, notably, especially with Sun Tzu in the game. A bunch of good wonders, too. Actually, almost all of the good Age 1 leaders are in this game. So Age 2 wonders, not so strong, but Age 1 wonders very strong. We also have Saladin, notably, Barbarossa, another strong leader, Nostradamus. So overall, there's no real single strategy that calls out as an obviously good one, or even, 2 strategies or anything. So this is definitely a game where flexibility and taking what the card row gives you should be key. El Chupacabra takes the Library of Alexandria. I personally prefer Stonehenge, but it's close. This is justifiable. Personal preference thing. Sakash takes the Pyramids. That makes sense to me. DB Starman takes Aristotle, Stonehenge, and Stockpile. Taking a leader and a wonder can be a bit awkward sometimes in a turn 2 when you elect your leader, pop, build a mine, and then you're kind of maybe taking an AJ yellow card or something. That being said, these are both strong. This is a good leader and a strong wonder, especially together. I think Aristotle and Stonehenge have good synergy. Now, Stonehenge plus Stockpile is a lot of civil actions you're using, but, maybe DB Starman mainly just wanted these 2, and the Stockpile is like a bonus that they don't mind if they don't use. That does leave me with a somewhat interesting decision, though. Well, I think there's maybe 2 main options here. I think that, these... Urban Growth is fine, but I'd also have to take a less good yellow card with it, so I didn't really seriously consider that. I think the 2 major options here are either Hippocrates plus Engineering Genius, or maybe just Sun Tzu by himself. Sun Tzu, the Jan Žižka synergy with Sun Tzu, so he always has to be considered in that score. I also think he's just generally a good leader. However, I think I did end up going with Hippocrates Engineering Genius. Partly because, obviously, Engineering Genius is a strong card. Now, there aren't any wonders on the row. There is maybe a Colossus coming, although there's no Suez Canal. But also, there not being a Suez Canal is a reason against Sun Tzu. Suez Canal, I think, is one of the major reasons to take Sun Tzu. So without Suez Canal, and with Sun Tzu coming also without a yellow card, Hippocrates is, I think, maybe a less strong leader than Sun Tzu, but he comes with an Engineering Genius. I thought this was better. And again, while there's no... while the remaining Age 8 wonders, maybe not exciting, there are a bunch of strong Age 1 wonders that I could potentially use the Engineering Genius on. So that's why I went with this play. Age 1 begins. Chupacabra now takes Sun Tzu for 1 civil action, elects him, builds a mine, and increases population. That seems like a good turn to me. At least, so El Chupacabra getting Sun Tzu in first position, a little threatening, but at least he doesn't have a military wonder to go with him, so I think it should be survivable. Sakich takes Confucius, stronger leader, elects him, and builds a mine. Seems like a good turn. Deepest Starman elects Aristotle, pops, builds a mine, and takes the urban growth. At least this is a good yellow card to go with the lab that they'll presumably be building next turn. Now it's my turn. I think I do want to elect Hippocrates. It was a little unfortunate to see Saladin come out this early. In one sense, you want Saladin early with Hippocrates, but in another sense, like, that he's at this early means one of my opponents would probably take him. You know, obviously with Hippocrates, you want to replace him as soon as possible. So Saladin is one of the best leaders to do that with. Looks like that's not going to happen with me. I mean, actually, I might take him this turn. We'll see what I end up doing, but, I don't, yeah. I think that, the basic issue with taking Saladin, which I did strongly consider actually in this position, maybe also Knights, although for 3 civil actions with no tactics yet, taking Knights this early a little questionable. The major issue with taking Saladin is that I would have to pass up either electing Hippocrates or building my mine. I think building my mine is a necessity this turn, so if I took Saladin for 3, I would basically be waiting a turn to elect Hippocrates. Now, that's not the end of the world, obviously, because Hippocrates, you know, he gives you value over time, so what, essentially, by taking Saladin this turn, meaning that I would be waiting an additional turn to elect Saladin as a leader and start getting value from him. And I basically felt that that wasn't worth 3 civil actions. Now, you can argue maybe it is worth it because the alternative is taking this immigration. That being said, sorry, this irrigation. That being said, I thought there was some irrigation synergy in this game. Specifically, Machu Picchu, Barbarossa always likes irrigation. No ocean liner service, but with Barbarossa and Machu Picchu as cards that like having irrigation. And also, there's a consideration of, I mean, Sun Tzu's in the game, so having some extra food income going can help me militarily as well. I don't want to take the Colossus because there's no Suez Canal. And again, there was irrigation synergy. So I felt that given that the possibilities of, especially since I'm losing Saladin, I might want to take Barbarossa as my replacement leader. And also I might want to aim for Machu Picchu, especially since I'm not getting an AJ wonder. Those reasons together made me feel that taking the irrigation for 2 was better than taking Saladin for 3 and delaying electing Hammurabi. There are some other leaders that I could get early. Again, Barbarossa, I'm prepared for with irrigation. Nostradamus is fine to get going early. Jan Žižka is fine to get going early. Michelangelo, maybe I can get some wonders going with him, possibly. Sabella is alright getting going early. Gutenberg is really the only Age 1 leader that I would not want to get early. And so, for that reason also, I felt that while Saladin is maybe the leader I would most prefer having, it wasn't enough to justify spending 3 civil actions on. I also didn't want to pop and take one of these and take an urban growth, for example. That could also perhaps be considered, but I thought that the irrigation, like I said, was had enough synergies that it was worth passing up the urban growth and popping for. I draw a bonus card on a developed territory. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of warfare, so me not popping is unfortunately punished. On the other hand, at least, you know, I'll have a chance to build a second lab next turn. El Chupacabra does take the development of warfare, increases their population, takes the Knights for 2 civil actions, and builds 1 siege of the library. That's a sensible turn, in my opinion. Gives up, you know, with library, especially delaying the lab, not as big a deal. Sakich Seeds reveals the development of civil life, so wrong order of those developments for me. builds a lab, so uses developments of civil life to increase the population, builds a lab with it, takes the alchemy for 2 civil actions, and also takes Richland. I guess Sakich doesn't want to go into consumption this turn, so doesn't want to pop. Of these cards, I mean, of these yellow, so that means that if Sakich wants to build the lab and take the alchemy, they kind of have to take one of these yellow cards, and yeah, I might have taken the Frugality instead. Well, for two major, yeah, I probably would have taken the Frugality instead, just because you never know for sure if you'll get a chance to use the Richland A before Age 1 ends, because maybe all your opponents would take all the irons or whatever, with at least the Frugality you'll know for sure you'll be able to use. But there are still all 3 copies of Iron in the deck, and 1 of Irrigation, so it's more likely than not that Sakich will be able to use this card. DB Starman doesn't see it. Instead, they offer me an Open Borders Agreement pact, which I was definitely happy to accept, especially with Barbarossa coming down the row. DB Starman builds 2 stages of the Stonehenge, takes the rich land, and plays the stockpile. So took the development of warfare and the increased population with civil life, so that sort of gives them enough civil actions to be able to afford playing that stockpile they took, so that makes sense to me. It's my turn now, and I was faced with an interesting decision. So, namely, which of these 2 leaders I want. Saladin actually ended up cycling back to me for 1 civil action. But we also have Barbarossa on the row. Now, Barbarossa, I think of all the Age 1 leaders, he has the highest ceiling. So if you think about him in comparison to Saladin, right? Saladin usually want to take the civil action. So Barbarossa, every time you use Barbarossa's ability, it's like you had an extra civil action, and you're also saving 1 rock and 1 food. So Barbarossa is kind of like having both Saladin and Ashoka, like Ashoka with a full bonus at the same time. So that's obviously like ridiculously powerful. Perhaps the strongest ability in the game, if we don't maybe consider like Age 3 leaders. But the issue, of course, is that you have to actually be able to use the ability every turn, meaning you need to have the food mainly tends to be the main stepping point for Barbarossa, but also military actions, obviously, because you're building military whenever using Barbarossa. And also you want to have the military building with him be valuable, which usually means having colonies on the deck. But as you can see from when I said it, in the current situation I'm in, I have all 3 things I need to make Barbarossa actually super strong. I have the irrigation to get food for him, I have a 3rd military action thanks to the Open Borders Agreement, and I even have a colony in my hand right now. So even though Barbarossa costs 1 more civil action than Saladin does, and even though Saladin I think is normally the leader you most want to replace Hammurabi with, I felt that in my situation, Barbarossa actually had the highest upside for me. And so after seeding, with which I revealed development of politics, I increased my population with civil life and built a lab with it, and I ended up actually taking Barbarossa. Now, another reason perhaps to take Saladin, another consideration of taking Barbarossa is if I took Saladin, I would have 2 civil actions left, and what would I do with them? I could increase my population, but I didn't want to do that. Development of warfare is already out. I didn't want to get into consumption that early, even with irrigation. And I could maybe take swordsmen, but I don't have a tactic in my hand right now. I would prefer knights if possible, so I didn't want to commit to swordsmen necessarily this early. Taking it for 2 civil actions is a bit of a commitment. I don't want to commit to theology this early when I don't know if I'll get the development of religion. So for those reasons, I ended up even taking the Colossus. Now, without Suez Canal, Colossus isn't the most exciting wonder. That said, I felt that it was still good in my situation, especially with Barbarossa and the irrigation, and now I even drew a 2nd colony that I'll be able to keep, along with my bonus cards. It was looking like I could potentially get a strong colonization game going. No payoff in Age 2, but still having more colonies is better. And so I thought that Colossus actually synergized very strongly with Barbarossa and with the military strategy it looked like I was going to be able to pursue. And it also meant that I could for sure be able to spend the Engineering Genius on something, which sometimes I've taken, I've kept an Engineering Genius A in my hand and never had an opportunity to spend it on an age 1 wonder. That can happen. So it's for all those considerations and reasons, I thought that the Colossus made sense to me, even without a Suez Canal in this game. I was definitely sad to pass up Saladin, though, and I think Saladin plus, say, Swordsman would also be, or maybe even Saladin plus Colossus plus, I mean, probably not Printing Press, but maybe increasing popping or something. That would also be a very defensible play. Maybe it would even be better. This is kind of a bit of a riskier play, perhaps. But I did think I was in a situation where pushing military with Barbarossa and colonization with Barbarossa looked to be quite strong for me. I discarded the Scientific Breakthrough. I wanted to keep the colony, considering all my synergies with it. My bonus cards, obviously. And I drew another colony, the best one in Age 1, as well as a medieval army tactic, which is nice, and an immigration. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the development of religion, unfortunately, so I missed out on both of those, that and Warfare. So not the best. Finishes the Library of Alexandria, takes Saladin happily for one civil action, plays the Phalanx tactic before electing Saladin, so the Phalanx tactic is the one getting upgraded, and finally takes the Theology with their last civil action. This is a very sensible turn in my opinion. Sakich Seeds reveals the development of settlement. Again, the developments are not in the right order for me, unfortunately. Increases the population normally, takes the Swordsman and a breakthrough, and plays the Fighting Band tactic. DB Starman Seeds reveals the development of markets. DB Starman finishes the Stonehenge, increases the population, takes Masonry, kind of an unfortunate order here. I'm not sure why DB Starman didn't play the Masonry first and then finish the Stonehenge, but maybe they have a plan for the extra science that they didn't want to spend 3 science this turn on. It's my turn. I didn't want to seed because I felt that I had a good chance at being able to push military. I seeded the vast territory, especially. I want that in the deck so that I can, because I felt pretty confident in my ability to win it with Barbarossa and my bonus cards and the Colossus. Reveal the cultural influence. I'm also not weakest. Now, unfortunately, there's no Knights. 1 copy of Knights has been taken by El Chupacabra. The other 2 are not revealed yet, so I can't push military too much. However, thanks to the development of markets, I am able to finish the Colossus this turn, which is good enough to make me strongest. So, I'm not electing Barbarossa this turn means I can get 1 more Hammurabi token anyway. I'm not sure if I do. Okay, I do. Oh yeah, I think I have to in order to get out of corruption, and I want the second warrior regardless, so. Yeah, 2 Hammurabi tokens is... The third one is a luxury. The first 2 are the ones you really want. So I think all of this seems to make sense to me to get strongest, get my military going. Now the question is what to spend my remaining 2 civil actions on. I think... Let's see. There are a couple interesting options here. The Great Wall is definitely always the one that you need to consider. However, because I have a Knight's tactic in my hand, it felt a little less important. And also, if I take the Great Wall or the Himeji Castle, which is also strongly worth considering, I didn't currently have a way to get my to get irons going. These are the first 2 copies of irons in the deck, but if I take one of these wonders, then I'll miss out probably on both of these copies of iron. One of them might be taken by El Chupacabra, the other maybe by Sakich, in which case DB Starman will be playing before me and might take the 3rd copy of iron. So if I don't take either of these copies of iron, it's looking likely that I won't get any irons. And so I didn't want to commit to an Age 1 wonder when I wasn't sure whether or not I would be able to get iron. So I think that's why I didn't take one of these. So then I think the major question comes down to, do I want this iron? I mean, maybe warfare, but with the Open Borders Agreement, this seemed less important to me and don't have a lot of science either. So I think the choice basically comes down to iron for 2 civil actions, or maybe something like rich land and increasing my population or something. And I end up going with the iron. It gives me something to do next turn, right? Next turn, I can potentially play the iron and start upgrading them, so that seemed good. I also gives me an iron negation, meaning it's possible that the Machu Picchu might cycle back to me, in which case it would obviously be very strong with iron in the irrigation. So, and it's also just a general good card to have. Obviously, this is the first copy of iron. So, I think overall, this turn seems pretty straightforward to me. As for cards I'm keeping, unfortunately, I kind of want 4 cards, so I need to decide what to discard. And I do end up discarding the Medieval Army Tactic. Again, I'm really looking to do a colonization game, so I wanted to keep as many colonies and bonus cards as possible. Discarding Medieval a Tactic is always rough, but I don't have a Knights in my hand yet. I don't necessarily know if I'll get one either. So it's possible that the Medieval Army Tactic will do literally nothing for me. But more importantly, if I do get a copy of Knights, I'd probably rather copy this upgraded Phalanx Tactic than use the Medieval Army Tactic. So that's why I discarded those. I draw another Medieval Army Tactic and a Fighting Man Tactic, so discarding the previous tactic rewarded. A Chupacabra Seeds reveals a rebellion. Unfortunately, it does hit me. I don't think I had a great way to get a happy face, so at least I only lose 2. Chupacabra now builds a knight to get a complete Phalanx Tactic going up to 8 strength, a little bit threatening, and takes the Himeji Castle, a rich land, and a warfare. So unfortunately, taking all those cards means the Machu Picchu is going to be discarded before my turn. Sakech Seeds reveals a Confucius event. Increases the population, plays the Swordsman, builds 2 directly to go up to 6 strength. We can see El Chupacabra even took strength for Saladin, so they're up to 10 strength. Definitely getting threatening. And unfortunately, DB Starman is able to take the Monarchy, play it, and have enough science to take the Knights and play it, and build not 1 but 2 Knights. And still has enough military actions to adopt the Phalanx Tactic. So DB Starman is able to go directly up to 10 strength. And this leaves me in a bit of a pickle, because unfortunately, DB Starman got the 2nd copy of Knights, and the 3rd copy is not on the row. So, and I don't particularly have the leeway to wait for it either, because El Chupacabra and DB Starman push strength so hard this turn. So that leaves me in a bit of an unfortunate situation where if I just play this Fighting Band Tactic, I'll be at 5 strength. I technically am able to defend myself against an aggression from El Chupacabra, but I wouldn't be able to defend myself from a double aggression against from El Chupacabra and DB Starman. Now, maybe they wouldn't do that, even if I did leave myself so vulnerable, but also I don't know when the next copy of Knights will be coming out anyway, even if I do wait for it. So I thought that if I don't get my strength going right now, then in order to maybe wait for the Knights, which I would rather build Knights than Warriors, but I felt that I didn't have the leeway to do that because of the aggressions, and they could even push strength further soon. So for that reason, I used Barbarossa's ability twice to get up to 4 Warriors. It's not, obviously not great to do this, to get so many Warriors going, but it's not horrible, I think, in my position, because I do have Barbarossa, so they're a lot cheaper than they would otherwise be, and I also have a vast territory in the deck that I seeded, so, and developed territory that I seeded, so I should be able, hopefully, to send these warriors away on colonies regardless, and then when I do, I'll be able to replace them with knights. So I thought that getting my strength up this turn with warriors was justifiable for that reason. It does mean I'll have to delay the iron upgrades, though. On the other hand, it does mean at least I can take Bread and Circuses and a Breakthrough. Bread and Circuses, I think, necessary card for me. I need a Happy Face solution before the end of H1. And the Breakthrough is also a very good card for me. My science is going to be a bit difficult, because there weren't any science developments revealed, and I didn't have a science leaders or wonders or anything, so I definitely need as much science as I can get in my position. And for similar reasons, I didn't seed because I was weakest, and now I'm at least not weakest, so I didn't want to seed on my turn, and I won't be drawing any cards on my turn anyway, so waiting to see this until next turn, I figured, was fine. Chupacabra does indeed have an aggression, and so it was a good thing that I built up my strength. Instead, Chupacabra aggresses against Sakech and takes 3 rocks. Chupacabra takes an iron, increases the population, and takes an engineering genius. So it doesn't upgrade irons, instead spends the civil actions on the engineering genius instead, notably. And builds a second knight to go up to 12 strength. Sakech Seeds reveals a wealthy territory. I don't have enough food to replace any of the warriors that I would have sent out to this colony, unfortunately. So I didn't feel comfortable bidding too much, especially knowing that there's a vast territory in the deck that I would definitely prefer to take. So I think I just bid, well, I can say I bid 3. I think I bid 1 warrior and 1 bonus card. I kind of, like I said, didn't want to win it because I wasn't able to replace that warrior if I would have sent it off on the colony. And so I would have gone down to 6 strength, which would have left me vulnerable to aggressions. So I didn't want to win it, so I kind of just bid 3 to get the price higher. So Sakich ends up winning it for a swordsman and a bonus card. Sakich takes monarchy, plays it, finishes pyramids, and takes a patriotism. So Sakich looks like they're just accepting that they'll be vulnerable to aggressions, and indeed they are. DB Stormman gets an enslave against Sakich. Increases the population, finally builds the second lab, and takes an iron and an alchemy and a cartography. So was sad to see the cartography going, because I know I have colonies in the deck, but DB Starman might have some trouble playing it because they'll probably want to do other things with their science first. Now it's my turn. I think I'm not weakest, and I want that colony in the deck, so I seeded it. I revealed the developed territory that I seeded. Again, I wouldn't be able to okay. Come to think of it, I kind of made, maybe not a mistake, but what I didn't consider at the time when I bid this is I forgot I had Hammurabi tokens. So if you think about it, if I won that territory, I would send away 1 warrior and I would get a yellow token out of it. But what I was afraid of was basically that once I replaced that, well, first of all, like I said, I wouldn't be able to replace that warrior. And second of all, I was afraid that once the age ended, I would have trouble. Well, I guess even without the hammer, come to think of it, even without the Hammurabi tokens. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should have tried to put more into this territory. Definitely the science would have been extremely helpful for me. Now, and even though I wouldn't have been able to replace the warrior, I could have gotten a Brennan Circuses instead, so it would have only cost me 1 strength. I would have been at 7. Though if I spent the bonus cards on it, and my opponents knew that I spent the bonus cards on it, then they might still try aggressions against me. It's just kind of an awkward position that I'm in at the moment, where I'm not able to, where I just don't have the food to colonize as much as I might like with Barbarossa. Still, though, maybe I should have bid 3. I think I bid 2 again because I didn't really want to win it, but I think winning it, for example, for 3 with a warrior and 1 bonus card, then I could have built a Bread and Circuses and been at 7, and then I would have been able to, at 7, yeah. At 7, I definitely still could have done myself. I think I also didn't want to build the Bread and Circuses this turn because I wanted to build irrigations instead. But yeah, I think in retrospect, I should have put more. On the other hand, I do know that there's a vast territory in the deck that I would rather have. But on the other hand, I don't know when the vast territory might be revealed, even though it does look like the event deck's moving relatively quickly. You still don't know for sure. So, and as we'll see, the science would have certainly ended up being helpful for me. I have a lot of stuff I need to do, and I'll want an H2 government form at some point, so difficult question. But yeah, I think that was a mistake, and I should have put more into it. I was a little too afraid of losing military at this time, I think. I was a little too intimidated by my opponents, probably. Anyway, I am at least able to upgrade 1 farm, so next turn I'll have enough food to use Barbarossa's ability, and I'll definitely want to use it on a knight so I can finally copy that upgraded Sensu tactic. So I did want to take that knights for 1 civil action. And with my last civil action, I considered taking the frugality, but I thought that I probably wouldn't be actually popping for a little while with Barbarossa. So this might end up just sitting in my hand anyway. And the Bread and Circuses I played because I figured that I thought that I would for sure want to build 1 next turn. I'll be in Rebellion next turn and I'll need it. Even considering with the Hammurabi token, I will still be in Rebellion next turn without the Bread and Circuses. So I thought that while I would almost certainly want to play both Bread and Circuses and Knights next turn, the Bread and Circuses was more certain than Knights. So I wanted to get that civil action out of the way right now, especially with me only being on 4 civil actions, and you really need to make each one count. And I draw 2 more bonus cards and a Reign of Terror. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the Barbarians. Chupacabra has the most culture, so nothing happens. Chupacabra builds 1 stage with the Engineering Genius, plays a Code of Laws, finishes the Himeji Castle, so they can finally start taking civil actions with Saladin. Sakich Seeds reveals a border conflict, so Sakich, being the weakest player, loses it. DB Starman, in this case, wins the border conflict. Sakich loses a lap to it, takes Nostradamus, plays in, develops alchemy, builds 1 alchemy, so at least they're still in 2 science production, and takes an urban growth to probably looking to rebuild that alchemy at some point, and a frugality. DB Starman Seeds reveals a pestilence, kind of an unfortunate event for me, as we'll see. Develops iron, upgrades it 3 times, so DB Starman, I think is the first one to actually do economic upgrades. But technically, I was the first one with the farm, but DB Starman gets all 3 at once, thanks to the border conflict, definitely very strong, and takes a copy of reserves. Age 2 begins. I draw 3 cards from the Colossus. None of them are events, so I do play the Reign of Terror. I thought that even with Sakich having Nostradamus, I felt pretty sure once I get the Sun Tzu tactic going that I should avoid being weakest at least. Another bonus card is definitely helpful, as well as a War and an Aggression. And the card that reveals is the Call to Arms. Unfortunately, it hits me. I wanted to seed because I wanted to reveal one of the territories that I seeded, but I didn't. I revealed this card instead. At least I draw a tactic off of it. I do have just enough food to... okay, so the Pestilence isn't so bad. I end up losing my idle worker that I'm able to replace just by increasing my population. Thanks to the Hammurabi token and the worker going back here, I have just enough food to do this. That I can build my arena to get out of Rebellion. That is, I think, 2 necessary actions, so I now have only 1 left that I have to decide how to use. Cultural Heritage, I don't think I have the civil actions to justify. Warfare, maybe, but I don't, again, I think I don't really have the science for it. Alchemy, definitely worth considering, just as something to do, even though I might prefer doing iron first instead. These are cards maybe worth considering, but none of them, for the reasons I stated, seem particularly exciting to me, so I decided instead to go and then upgrade my second farm, especially, obviously, again, with Barbarossa, as much food that you can get. I want as much food as I can get, especially since I really want to start getting knights soon. I also have a... Unfortunately, I won't be able to keep all these bonus cards in my hand since I only have 3 military actions. Let's see what I end up discarding. I think the basic question here is, do I want to discard the tactic? Do I want to keep it tactic, or do I want to keep another bonus card? And I ended up discarding the tactic. I figured with 4 warriors, even with me wanting to colonize, it felt to me a bit unlikely that I would be able to get rid of all these warriors to justify the mobile artillery tactic. So I kept the bonus card over it instead. Then I draw a terrorism, an international agreement, and a strategic territory. So now, at this point, I think we can take a look at the general situation of the game going into Age 2. It's not looking super great for me. We can see that El Chupacabra and Sakich have the most civil actions, but Sakich is the weakest and had those aggressions against them. DB Starman is the only person who has well, I have farm upgrades going, but DB Starman has the iron upgrades going, which are better. On the other hand, they also didn't take an Age 1 leader yet, so that's a little bit of a weakness for them. Chupacabra has the culture lead, not too big as of the moment, but because they have 4 culture production, it'll get bigger as time goes on. So it's looking like at the moment, mainly thanks to the civil actions and their military, because DB Starman and El Chupacabra both have upgraded phalanx tactics, that they are probably in the lead right now. Sakich, I think, due to the aggressions, perhaps is trailing, whereas I'm maybe in 3rd place at the moment. So I think that not having, not getting the knights going in H1 is the biggest issue that I faced. I'm not sure if there was a realistic way to avoid it. I guess the way to avoid it would have been to take the swordsman earlier when it was available for 2 civil actions. If I had been building swordsmen instead of warriors, well, it would have cost more rocks, but if I had found a way to do that, then I would have been in a better strength position, obviously. That being said, it's not looking too bad for me, and if I can get these iron upgrades going soon, and get the upgraded Sun Tzu tactic going soon, maybe get some scientific methods, things will be looking up for me. Especially with the terrorism that I drew, me being last place in culture will obviously be very helpful with the terrorism. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the raiders. Unfortunately, it hits me as well as Sakich. Takes the irrigation and plays it to get some food going. And also takes the Forbidden City, so Chupacabra is taking 2 H1 wonders, notably. Sakich Seeds reveals an inhabited territory. Finally, one of the yellow token territories that I seeded that Barbarossa really likes. So I was willing to put a fair bit into it, and I ended up winning it. I decide to spend warriors instead of bonus cards because it's obviously cheap to replace the warriors with Barbarossa, and so I wanted to keep the bonus cards to make me defend against aggressions easier. Might have been a mistake, though. Sakich increases the population with frugality, takes a rich land and a reserves. TB Starman offers the trade routes agreement to Chupacabra, which is accepted. Unfortunately, this cancels our open borders agreement, meaning I'm down to 2 military actions now. Not great. Increases the population, takes and plays the Anziska. Obviously, very strong to have the Anziska with the upgraded Sun Tzu tactic going. So that makes TB Starman look a lot scarier. And takes Theology. Now it's my turn. So that was a colony. I still felt like a colonization game was looking good for me, so I did want to take that colony, to see that see the colony. I am the weakest, but I also know that that's the vast territory that I ceded, meaning I wanted to get that out during my turn, so I had an advantage in bidding for it. And I do end up winning it, luckily for only 3, which I'm able to pay with 1 warrior and 1 bonus card. So I'm able to keep my H2 bonus card. Unfortunately, and that also means that even though I only have 2 military actions left, that is just enough to play the knights, and I'm able to use Barbarossa's ability to build the warriors and the knights. I have just enough rocks for that, meaning that next turn I can finally copy the Sun Tzu tactic and start somewhat competing in strength with my opponents again. Unfortunately, obviously, I don't have the military actions to copy at this turn, so I'm still... This does mean that I am vulnerable to an aggression from DB Starman, but I thought that the vast territory was just too good for me as Barbarossa. We can see that it's my yellow token bank is looking really good right now, especially with irrigation. With irrigation and these 2 yellow token colonies, I felt pretty comfortable in terms of population for the rest of the game. So I thought that it was too important to win that vast territory that I was willing to be vulnerable to an aggression from DB Starman. Again, maybe on that inhabited territory earlier, I could have spent the bonus card instead of the 2nd warrior, and then I would have had 3 warriors and 1 knight, so I would have been at 9. I still would have been vulnerable to an aggression from DB Starman, but at least I would have had an extra unit going, so... But I was also maybe had the attitude of, well, I guess I probably won't want warriors, so... Yeah, in retrospect, perhaps I should have done those colonizations differently. Regardless, I have 3 civil actions left. I did want to take this revolutionary idea. I was feeling really pressed for science at the moment, so I thought, again, any science I can possibly get would be very helpful. With my final civil action, I think there's only really one option, which is to take this Code of Laws. With the revolutionary idea, I thought that the Code of Laws should be possible to take. In addition, with Barbarossa, I felt that I might be able to do a revolution into constitutional monarchy at some point. So I thought that the science cost of the Code of Law should be justified. I will also be looking to get scientific methods at some point. if you notice a break in the music, that's because I had to pause my recording. Anyway, El Chupacabra Seeds reveals a Confucius event. Increase the population, builds one more stage of the Forbidden City, takes a Frugality, and the Strategy. That was a card that I had to pass up next turn because I thought the Revolutionary idea was more... Yeah, I should have mentioned that when I was going with my turn. Obviously, Strategy is something you would like to have if possible, but I thought that I would almost certainly not have the science for that strategy if I took it without the Revolutionary idea. So I thought the Revolutionary idea was more important for me. So El Chupacabra gets the strategy instead, unfortunately. Socket Seeds with Nostradamus reveals a foray. El Chupacabra and DB Starman win it. Increase the population, plays the Patriotism, builds a Swordsman, takes James Watt, and the Rare Red, so Socket gets that powerful combo. DB Starman, unfortunately, does have a plunder that they can use against me that I can't defend after winning those colonies, so was sad to see that. On the other hand, at least DB Starman takes most my food and not my rock, so while that doesn't mean I can't upgrade irons next turn, I still was more pressed for rocks than for food in my position, so that's a small silver lining. Increase the population, builds a Theology, Masonry, builds a Theology, and takes an Opera. With Corruption, notably. It's my turn. I didn't want to seed yet, I think because there's no real reason to. I'll be adopting the Phalanx tactic as we can see, so I won't be drawing cards next turn regardless. Sorry, the music glitched for a second. Anyway, like I said, I won't be drawing another card, so I can always seed the Terrorism next turn into the following deck, and I wanted to wait to seed it until I was... now you can see I'm at least stronger than El Chupacabra. And also because I'll be taking Napoleon this turn. Now, replacing Barbarossa with Napoleon does come as a sacrifice. Obviously, I can't use any more Barbarossa abilities, and I will be able to use some next turn with the food. On the other hand, I'll probably be wanting to upgrade irons instead with my rocks next turn, and I'm also in a position where I don't necessarily need that much more military, at least in the short term. It'll be hard to get above DB Starman anyway, but at least I'm above El Chupacabra. So, for those reasons, I decided to elect Napoleon, especially since now I become even the strongest. So I thought that becoming the strongest was better than leaving myself open to using more Barbarossa abilities, again, especially because I'll be getting some irons soon. I could potentially take the coal, but I wouldn't be able to upgrade coal mines next turn unless I got some help from the event deck. And it would also cost a lot of science, where I would prefer iron plus scientific method. Coal plus scientific method can be very difficult to do, especially in my position where I don't have the greatest economy going. So instead, I took the breakthrough. Again, I wanted as much science as I possibly could. I did have to pass up this copy of Kanman, but there's a few reasons. But as we can see, El Chupacabra is the only one of my opponents without monarchy. So I thought that it was very likely that I would be able to get the second copy of Kanman if I wanted it. There's also a Republic that I could take if I wanted it. I also wasn't sure if El Chupacabra could even take this copy of Kanman because their hand's so full. So I thought that the breakthrough... So I thought that the breakthrough was more important than taking the first copy of Kanman on the row. And with my remaining civil action... Well, I also play the Code of Laws, and I think play the Revolutionary idea. Yeah, I didn't... You know, even with my colonization game, I don't think I'll have enough science to justify the navigation. Journalism, worth considering. I'll have the population for it. But I think it would be probably too hard for me to be able to afford the 8 rocks it'll take to build it. I'll also have other things I'm going to be doing in the meantime. I'll probably want to put that population maybe into military. With the Revolutionary idea, I'll be able to still play the iron next turn, so I thought that playing the Code of Laws this turn to finally get that 5th civil action was good. And I draw an aggression. El Chupacabra Seeds reveals a Reign of Terror. It's at Socketch. Upgrades the second farm, finishes Forbidden City, takes a coal, and because they haven't upgraded irons yet, in a cannon, so we can see El Chupacabra didn't even take the Kanman. Takes strength with Saladin. Socketch destroys a mine, in order to get out of Rebellion due to that Reign of Terror that I seeded. Builds another stage of the Wonder, takes and plays Navigation, and takes the selective breeding that they'll need, though their economy is looking pretty rough at the moment. DB Starman Seeds reveals a historic territory that I was not willing to bid for because I didn't feel like I could justify the rock spent on it. I also didn't think I needed it. I was looking to finally start upgrading my economy this turn. So Sakich is able to win it. DB Starman plays Alchemy, builds one directly, upgrades one, upgrades three, so now DB Starman has a very strong economy going, and takes Isaac Newton for even more science. Now it's my turn. I could consider an aggression against Sakich, but if Sakich had one Age 2 bonus card, then that aggression wouldn't have succeeded. I think I've only seen this one in the game so far, so I thought it wasn't worth it, especially since I really want that terrorism out. I will almost certainly win that terrorism, and I thought it would be a good way to potentially get me back into the game. And I reveal a strategic territory. I was willing to put a lot into this territory because I felt that I really wanted an H2 tactic, first of all, and second of all, with Napoleon obviously getting more card draws in and getting the strength. That was viable. I thought that with my farm income, I could justify getting this territory for a lot, and I did end up going all in for it. So an expensive territory for me, maybe a bit too expensive. I'm a little suspicious in retrospect of the way I put the colonies this game. Again, I think I was mostly looking for a tactic that could also inform me whether I wanted to take these cannons or these riflemen, which is going to be a difficult question for me. So, and with Napoleon, I won't be really vulnerable to aggressions, I think, doing this play. So that's not really a concern. It's more, is the cost worth it? I think it's hard to say. Well, in my case, it's maybe not worth it because my card draws weren't very exciting. I didn't get a war or a tactic or bonus cards or really anything too exciting in my draws, so that part of it was unfortunate. Maybe I shouldn't have bid so much. I do have to rebuild my knights in order to... I chose to rebuild knights instead of my warrior, because I was thinking of maybe getting into hussars. Now, the cost of doing it this way is I don't have the rocks to upgrade an iron this turn. So maybe I should have put the warrior. I would have been at 10 strength, which technically would have left me vulnerable to an aggression from DB Starman, but realistically probably wouldn't have done it. So I think maybe putting a warrior here instead so I could start... Yeah, I ended up taking... I think vision upgrade obviously would be good with the iron. I want the... I definitely want the Kanman too now that it's available for me. It'll be something... I might even do a revolution into it next turn. And I take the rifleman over the cannons because it seems like without drawing a tactic, I think the rifleman is like as important to me as the cannons are. And I'll know for a fact I can use the rifleman on this upgraded Sun Tzu tactic, which I probably would rather do instead of hussars. It's arguable. Kind of a awkward turn for me. I think that building this warrior instead and getting my iron mines going, so that would have cost an extra 2 civil actions. That would have meant I would have to give up either well, I could have, I think, not increase my population. So maybe I would have given up, say, on the efficient upgrade to get the iron going. So that would have cost me, though, 2 rocks in exchange for 1 civil action. Maybe it would have been worth it. Maybe I also could have still taken the efficient upgrade and maybe not taken the rifleman. Although, again, rifleman, I mean, Chupacabra will want it, DB Starman will want it. If I don't take this copy, I probably won't get any rifleman. So I thought that rifleman was a necessary card for me to take. As well as Kanman, maybe I could have waited, although if there's a second copy, so if I don't take this copy, maybe I'll miss out on the second copy too. I definitely want the Kanman. Definitely a bit of a tricky turn. I think I maybe should have considered the warrior upgrade iron play more than I did. Actually, maybe I could have... Yeah, I got nowhere with not increasing population, and it's close. I draw a bonus card and a defensive army, so now I wish that I had... Well, I would need the rifleman anyway for the defensive army. It makes me wish that I took the swordsman way back when. Regardless. Chupacabra plays coal, increases population with frugality, upgrades coal mine, takes a rich land, and another frugality. Sakich Seeds reveals an arms industry, so I at least get a little bit out of it, thanks to my knights. Plays the reserves for rocks so they can finish the railroad, finally getting some more strength, now not really vulnerable to any aggressions at all. Takes the cannons, finally rebuilds a lab, the second lab with urban growth, and takes a patriotism. Both my opponents passing up these military technologies, notably. DB Starman offers a scientific cooperation to Sakich, but it is rejected, which... Yeah, it was definitely a little ambitious for DB Starman to offer this to Sakich. Anyway, they elect Isaac Newton. They take the rifleman and upgrade 2 rifleman. Plays the Conquistos tactics instead of the upgraded phalanx. Kind of. I guess it's one more strength, though. The phalanx tactic lets you build more riflemen. I guess it makes sense. Takes the selective breeding and a breakthrough. Has to float a civil action though, because of Newton obviously refunding it. So the civil action they got from Newton with the rifleman ends up going to waste, sadly. Now it's my turn. I did want to seed because there's obviously a terrorism in this deck, so I wanted to get that terrorism out as soon as I could. Between the Independence Declaration and the refugees, I felt that the Independence Declaration, I mean, maybe it could hit Sakich, although Sakich, well, the happy face would be annoying, but Sakich is going to get more happy faces soon anyway, presumably. Chupacabra wouldn't lose that much from the Independence Declaration, whereas if it was hit me, it would be kind of a huge deal. So that the Independence Declaration was more risky for me than the refugees was. And I revealed new deposits. So the new deposits is enough to, after I rebuild a word, to get, after I rebuild my tactic to become strongest again. The new deposits lets me upgrade 2 of my mines, and actually all 3 with the efficient upgrade. So getting the efficient upgrade instead of upgrading my mine last turn, I guess ended up being justified. Now the cost is I'm not able to take this cannon, unfortunately, because I spent that civil action instead last turn on the efficient upgrade. So actually, maybe in retrospect, I should have built the mine instead of the efficient upgrade, and then I could have taken this cannon, which would have been good with the defensive army. Missing out on the cannon for 1 civil action, definitely not great. I thought that getting the mines going is more important. This turn, maybe instead of that last mine upgrade, I should have taken the cannon instead. I think I felt that, I guess I felt that I was satisfied with the upgraded phalanx. I mean, the upgraded phalanx is 2 strength less than the defensive army anyway, so the upgraded phalanx is not that much worse than the defensive army. And I'm also a little pushed for science at the moment, so the science cost for the cannons. On the other hand, obviously having the cannons for potential H3 tactics could also be very strong. So I think it's a bit of a close decision. Maybe I should have taken the cannon. I did just got this defensive army tactic though, since I didn't take the cannon, and I draw Cold War, which is a good card for me. Chupacabra uses Richland to upgrade a 2nd coal mine, builds a 2nd knight, upgrades population 2 times, builds a 3rd warrior, takes the reserves and an engineering genius, and finishes upgraded coal mines. So all these civil actions really been being put to good use by Chupacabra. Takes the strength from Saladin. Sakich Sees reveals a freedom of movement. Uses the freedom of movement to basically upgrade, basically as like a development of civil life, basically to upgrade this without using a civil action, which is better than nothing for sure. It takes James Watt, which will finally let Sakich get these economic upgrades going, which is definitely good, and takes that happy face building that they'll need at some point. TV Starman Seeds reveals a wealthy territory that I am able to win, even though Sakich chose not to bid on this. So I was definitely happy to win this territory. Basically getting 6 rocks out of it. I definitely have the population to justify this. So Sakich, on the other hand, is able to take and finish the Eiffel Tower this turn, which Sakash which looks to be actually be quite good for... Sorry, DB Starman does this. It'll definitely be quite good for DB Starman because they will need this happy face once the age ends. So I do actually agree with Eiffel Tower here. They have the rocks for it too, obviously. Also plays the cartography and develops selective breeding and increases it. So Newton being put to great use by DB Starman here. Definitely DB Starman getting a lot of value from their leader. It's my turn. I see the Cold War. Even though I'm weakest, again, I want to get this terrorism out as soon as I can. And also, I felt that the Cold War is a nice card to have in the deck for me. I felt pretty confident in my ability to be able to get in on the Cold War. And I do reveal that terrorism. So I destroy... It was a bit of a difficult decision. Well, maybe not. I thought that with El Chupacabra, I destroyed their lab. I could have destroyed the temple instead, but I thought that El Chupacabra could have just rebuilt the theology directly, so it wouldn't have cost them a civil action, really. So I thought that destroying the lab was more likely to cost a civil action. So I guess I had no choice but to destroy the lab and DB Starman. Here I had a choice between... Here I decided to destroy the temple instead of the lab. I thought that DB Starman was going to be forced to rebuild the temple, whereas if I destroyed the lab, DB Starman could potentially just operate off of 2 labs and put that population into something else. So I thought even though the theology is 1 rock less than the alchemy, I thought that the theology was necessary to rebuild and the alchemy wasn't. So that's why I destroyed the theology. Now in my turn, I increase my population because I want to get that tactic going again so I can be strongest again. But I do also want to take the scientific method, definitely, really. Unfortunately, for me, the 2 copies of scientific method were towards the end of the H2 deck, but at least they're available now. I am able to have enough rocks to actually upgrade both of them. So now my economy, which was looking pretty rough for a while. Oh, also notably, I decided to use freedom of movement to move a worker from irrigation to knights. We can see that even with, because I got so many territories, including these 2 yellow territories, my yellow bank is so strong that I felt that even just with 1 farm, that was more than enough to get me as much population as I wanted. And so by putting that into knights, I was able to get my full tactic going while also upgrading both of my labs to scientific methods. So looks a bit unusual, but I do actually think this was a good play on my end. Finally getting my economy going again. I've drawn it. But the best territory, the autonomous territory, as well as an international trade agreement, which is one of the 2 best packs after scientific cooperation. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the politics of strength, which I am able to win, thankfully, off of it. Unfortunately, it's H2 cards, but still always nice to win. I get, so this is a Napoleonic army, I think, as well as 2 aggressions, another bonus card, and a promise of military protection. Tactic and bonus card are nice, at least. El Chupacabra builds a warrior, 2 warriors to get 2 tactics. And as we can see, El Chupacabra ends up getting the theology anyway, so it was right for me to destroy the lab, I think. Although, I guess El Chupacabra chose, instead of building the lab, to put that population into the military. So maybe destroying the temple to force El Chupacabra to limit El Chupacabra's options might have actually been better in retrospect. I think it's close. El Chupacabra takes Maria Theresa, Elixir, and takes an Evergreen Growth. Sakash takes the Cavalryman. At least because of this play, El Chupacabra has only 1 science income. Anyway, Sakash plays the Patriotism to build a Cavalryman, 2 Cavalryman actually, and adopt the Conquistadors tactics. So now Sakash is actually strongest thanks to the Railroad. And takes an efficient upgrade. H3 begins. DB Starman offers me the scientific cooperation pact that I reject. This I spent a fair bit of time thinking of. I think it's a difficult decision. Now, we are about even in science. I mean, DB Starman's 1 ahead. There were 2 major reasons, though, that I rejected the scientific cooperation pact. One reason was that I felt that, we'll talk about this in a bit, but I felt that of my opponents, DB Starman was in the strongest position. So even though the scientific cooperation would benefit me, I thought that it would benefit, like, because DB Starman is my biggest opponent, like, me benefiting and DB Starman benefiting doesn't get me closer to first. It gets me closer to second, but not closer to first. And second of all, obviously with Newton, DB Starman has a lot more potential to use the scientific cooperation pact than I do. Either both because Newton gives them more civil actions that they can use to play more techs, and because if they get computers or a multimedia going, then they'll obviously be benefiting a huge amount from it. So I spent a long time thinking about it, but for those two reasons, I ended up rejecting the pact. In retrospect, though, I think I probably should have accepted it. I mean, it wouldn't have let me get the Kanmon going this turn, unfortunately, but I think I still should have accepted, maybe. Anyway, they finish upgrading their farms, take a justice system and play it, take a wave of nationalism and the reserves. Now it's my turn. Instead of seeding, I mean, I could have seeded. There's some cards that, you know, especially the territory, maybe I run Zeka, though. It's a little, with Sakich and Baby Sturman both having a higher colonization bonus than I do, the territory would have been maybe a bit optimistic. So instead, I decided to offer the international trade agreement to who I felt was my weakest opponent at the time, Sakich, to get some more rocks. I thought that would definitely be helpful for me, especially since I was without rocks for so long. I did want to take this Air Forces, though. I was definitely happy to get the first copy of Air Forces, especially, as we'll see in a bit, in my position. It was looking like I might want to get a big war going in order to win the game. So I needed the Air Forces. I decided to get out of corruption by upgrading to Rifleman. This also makes me strongest. So I did draw a tactic with my Colossus, the positional army. And the positional army tactic will also need Riflemen anyway. So I'll want these Riflemen no matter what. And as my last turn, I didn't want any of these cards. Again, Cavalryman with my positional army tactic. Cavalryman I felt I wouldn't end up using. The other cards I didn't want. So I just increased my population for my last civil action. And I got the bonus card, the tactic, and the impact. None of the other cards I thought were likely to see use. And now at this point, at the beginning of Age 3, we can take a look at the general situation of the game. So, in culture terms, I'm in last place. Not by that much, though, although I also have 0 culture production. So I'm going to need to find some way to get culture going fast if I don't want to be left far behind. At least in terms of rocks, I'm competing well with everyone. And science, me and DB Starman are definitely in the lead. Civil and military actions are about even. Strength-wise, I'm doing pretty well, though that's partly because of Napoleon. So I would say that overall, my economy is about... So the reason I said that I had to be someone who's in the lead is I thought that economically speaking, DB Starman and I are in the lead, I think, because El Chupacabra and Sakich have such weak science income. But DB Starman has the significant culture advantage over me, and I didn't feel like I had enough to make up for that culture advantage. So for that reason, I felt that DB Starman was definitely in the lead in this game. Chupacabra also doing pretty well. Gonna need to fix that science at some point, but they have strong resource and food income. Pretty good civil actions. Gonna need more military action soon, which will be harder without the science. So El Chupacabra definitely has some significant issues, especially with the science and the military actions, but also some strength going, and also the culture. So I thought that of my opponent, Sakich was in the weakest position. Didn't really have a great economy going, even with the railroad. And their culture is also behind my opponents. It was, in terms of myself, it was definitely looking not great for me. So that's also why I figured that probably if I wanted to win this game, I might need to get at least one big war. Unless I can get, like, I don't know, movies or something going real quick. Chupacabra takes the reserves, an opera, increase the population, and builds a 4th farm, so is really looking to get food. I'm not sure I've ever seen 4 farms like this before, maybe once. It's definitely a rare sight. Sakich has to destroy a mine again to get out of rebellion, plays scientific breeding, upgrades twice, and takes an urban growth. DB Starman now plays an opera, but doesn't build one, instead builds knights, but does take Marlena and player. I think she doubles the tactic at least and takes the military theory. Marlena definitely will be a strong leader for DB Starman with the operas and helping with military. On my turn, I do seed. I'm the strongest. It's, I think, like a neutral impact. And I reveal the international negotiations is definitely a very, especially on my turn, very nice card to have. I end up taking science from El Chupacabra. I think it's a pretty natural decision to make. El Chupacabra is in desperate need of science, is pretty fine on their other resources, whereas I need science probably. I mean, I could use rocks too, but El Chupacabra has a ton of rocks. I could definitely use science as well. So on this turn, I ended up deciding to go for oils. I think it's my second turn in age 3, but there's still, you know, it's still early enough in age 3 that I think that the oils could potentially be useful. I think the reason not to take the oils is I'm putting 9 science into it. On the other hand, I do know that there is a Cold War in the deck, and in addition, the number of cards that I might want, well, I'll want a fair amount of stuff though. I want this Kanmon, I want the Air Forces, I'll want rockets, and I'll ideally, if possible, want a military theory for my war. So that's actually a fair amount of science that I'm spending. Maybe in retrospect, this was a mistake. I could have, instead of taking the oil, I could have potentially taken this Manhattan Project instead. This would have also been obviously a strong wonder for me. I think maybe I was feeling behind enough. I was like, oh, I'm behind, but this oil could potentially like give me something to catch up to my opponents. But I think maybe I wasn't as behind as I was afraid I was. I mean, I'm kind of behind, but I think the Manhattan Project definitely would have been extremely good for me as well. So I think the science cost in particular is questionable here. If I had if I had accepted the Scientific Cooperation Pact, obviously the oil would have been a much easier card to justify. But without the scientific cooperation, maybe this was a mistake and Manhattan Project was better. But anyway, that's what I do. And I built a warrior mainly to become stronger than DB Starman because I know there's refugees in the deck. And I draw an impact of government and an impact of balance. At least the impact of government is suitable. El Chupacabra increase the population, finally rebuilds that lab I destroyed, and takes computers. Plays reserves for food just because they have nothing better to do. Has to take corruption because their hands full, not anything else they're doing. I guess they wanted the computers that badly. They took it for 3 civil actions. Yeah, makes sense. Good card for them. Sacketch Seeds. Reveals to develop territory. I wasn't willing to put too much into this again because I knew the refugees was in the deck. I didn't want to become weakest. Even though the science would have been helpful for me. So DB Starman ends up winning it for only 1 Rifleman and 2 bonus cards. Sacketch ends up taking the Manhattan Project, as well as Mandela is able to elect him this turn to replace James Watt, increase the population, and takes an engineering genius. DB Starman plays the Wave of Nationalism, reserves for food, is able to rebuild that Rifleman, takes a democracy and an urban growth, and patriotism. Now it's my turn. I seeded impact of balance with 0 culture production not happening. I wanted to get that refugees out this turn if possible. And so I reveal a Cold War, which is also a nice card to have. Indeed, actually, that was a very good reveal for me because it lets me play the Kanmon this turn after spending the science on the oil. So that was definitely a lucky reveal for me. I do have enough rocks to fully upgrade my oils, as well as take this rockets that I need for my tactic. So I think those civil actions are pretty straightforward. The last thing that I had to decide on this turn was which of these leaders I wanted. And I spent a fair amount of time on it. Pierre definitely could have been good for me, especially with the impact of balance in my hand. Would make this a suitable impact. I could start stacking these arenas, and there's an internet in the deck that I could potentially go for. On the other hand, I felt it didn't seem likely that even with Pierre, I would be able to get a strong internet going, because I don't have any other urban buildings I could maybe hope to get. I mean, multimedia I might just not get. Someone else might take this copy. I could hope to get movies, but maybe I won't be in a position, especially since I felt that the military path was a more likely way for me to win this game than the peaceful path. That was the thing I ended up deciding, and for that reason I took Churchill. Another reason to take Churchill is I did the math where I'm going to want to Air Forces, rockets, and military theory, ideally. And so in 2 turns, I will have 15 science. And Air Forces, Rockets, Military Theory costs 31. Or actually, yeah, in 2 turns I won't even have enough to play both of these without Churchill. But with Churchill and the science bonus I will. So basically I felt that because I'll want a lot of science for Rockets, Air Forces, and Military Theory, and directly Winston Churchill will let me play both of these by 2 turns from now, where I wouldn't have been able to do that without Churchill. For those reasons, I thought that Churchill was much better than Pierre for me, even though that's usually not the case. Unfortunately, I don't draw a war yet. I was feeling pretty nervous. Instead, I drew 2 impacts. At least the impact of strength would be good for me. Impact of happiness won't be, and a military alliance. Chupacabra increases the population twice, which gives them just enough science to develop the computers and upgrade 2 of them, and takes the modern infantry. Sakich plays a team sports, 2 of them, I guess, right, for the Mandela culture. And takes the second copy of computers and builds the second lab finally. Not sure about this computer. I mean, it does pair well with the Manhattan Project, but I'm not sure if it's a little optimistic, I think, to think that Sakich will be able to play it. I think maybe these yellow cards would have been better for them. DB Stroman develops democracy, builds an opera, takes a revolutionary idea, and a reserves, and a patriotism, and a multimedia, taking a lot of cards with the civil actions. Multimedia maybe won't end up doing anything for them, but probably, I guess, didn't have anything better to do, so might as well. Now it's my turn. I seeded, even though I'm not strongest, so I won't be able to win refugees. I think the impact of strength, I definitely won it in the deck. I felt very confident I would be able to win it at the end of the game. So I wanted that in there before I might war, possibly even as soon as next turn. I do reveal the refugees that I don't win, but at least Sakich, who, as we've established, maybe Chupacabra and DB Stroman in a better position, so Sakich winning it is what I would prefer if it's not me. Now, I do need to be conscious of military actions because I want to start spinning them now, but I also want to get my 3 draws so that I have as many chances as possible to get a war. So I wanted to get 4 riflemen going. My plan is to get 2 positional army tactics plus 2 air forces. So I'll need these 4 riflemen at some point regardless. As for my remaining civil actions, I didn't elect Churchill yet because I was planning on, because I wasn't playing a military tech this turn. I didn't feel like I needed to. And so I thought that I didn't need to set up myself up for a war next turn either, 2 turns from now, especially with this revolutionary idea. 2 turns from, I would still be able to war 2 turns from now. That would probably be my last chance to. So yeah, I thought, but I wanted to keep Napoleon around for a bit longer just for the extra military action, I think, so that next turn I could build 2 rockets while still drawing 3 cards. Because my population, I take the revolutionary idea, obviously, very important card for me. And I also take the reserves, another important card, maybe, probably for food instead of rocks, but I will need more population to get on my military units. My remaining civil actions didn't have that much to do with them. I took the movies. This is, again, maybe a bit optimistic, but I thought that, you know, if I can get a war, then I'll still want something to do on my last turn, and building 1 or 2 movies could be a nice thing to have. I still have this impact of balance too, so they could also help me with that if I end up seeding it. And I just increased my population with the last move. I didn't want any of these cards. My science is under heavy strain as it is. I still don't draw a war, so I draw an aggression and 2 packs. That I did not want to see for sure. Chupacabra increased the population, plays him on the infantry, takes Bill Gates, obviously. That's probably what Chupacabra was looking towards when they got those computers going. Definitely a strong leader for them in their position. And they upgrade 2 warriors to run the infantry and build a 2nd temple to get out of rebellion. Or, yeah. Sakich is able to get a 2nd copy of Air Forces, builds a 3rd lab, takes the military build-up, and that's it. DB Stroman gets the 3rd copy of Air Forces and plays it with the patriotism to get 1 Air Force, plays the revolutionary idea and takes the tanks. I didn't want to see the impact of balance because it might end up being 0 for me. And the military alliance will still be good for me because even though I don't have a war in my hand yet, I was definitely feeling my only chance of winning, even maybe not finishing 4th at this point, is drawing a war in my turn. So I was basically had to, like, since my out was drawing a war, I needed to play for that out. And given that, the military alliance would obviously help. Again, I thought that Sakic was the least likely person I would war, at least if I wanted to get first. And so if I got the military alliance with Sakic, that would likely just give me an extra 3 strength for free. Now I finally elect Churchill because I'm gonna use his ability to get 2 rockets. We can see that next turn with 28 and 32 rocks, that will still be more than enough to get 2 more rockets and 2 air forces. I am lucky enough, at least, that the military theory is available on my turn. I'm very happy to see that. And I am able to actually play it this turn too, with the revolutionary idea. So this, I think, is again, I'm playing to my outs of drawing a war. So I think this was the right play. And I increased my population. The endowment of the arts could have been considered, but I thought that I was feeling a little strained for civil actions, and so I thought that making sure I would have enough civil actions to do everything I needed to do was more important than taking this, even though I am the lowest in culture right now. And I'm able to build a 3rd rocket even while still drawing 3 cards. And thankfully I do draw not only the war, but also an impact of industry that is going to be very good for me. So this, at least, is a very good draw. Chupacabra plays the classic army tactic, finally plays the strategy, upgrades 2 more warriors to modern infantry, increases the population, takes the revolutionary idea and the movies, and plays the reserves for rocks. Sakic plays a cannon, increases the population twice, plays the military build-up to build 2 cannons, and play the mechanized army tactic. So now to get stronger, obviously my strength pushed a lot, so my opponents have to respond to that. Takes the endowment for the arts and the civil service. DB Starman now develops the military theory, plays the reserves, increases the population, plays the patriotism, builds an air forces, and destroys a lab to build a 3rd rifleman. Obviously, understandably scared of my strength push, and takes an urban growth. Now, in my turn, I obviously have to war. The age is going to end. Actually, the age has already ended. So, yeah, if I don't war this turn, I'm not going to war at all. So I need to do it this turn. The question is who to war. And I actually spent a lot of time deciding who to war. It was easier than you might think to calculate which of the standings of my opponents, because the only impacts in the deck right now are actually from me. So I know all of the impacts in the deck. So I was able to calculate exactly, with the current set of impacts, how much culture my opponents would have. It was also the amount of strength they were threatening after my war was also pretty easy to calculate. They all had their tactics and stuff played already. So I was actually able to very directly calculate how much culture I would win in them from a war. And so depending on who I warred, what the resulting landscape would look like. So I won't bore you all with the details, but essentially the upshot was if I warred El Chupacabra or Sakic, I was guaranteed to finish 2nd, and DB Starman was guaranteed to finish 1st. If I warred DB Starman, though, there was a possibility that I could finish 1st. Now, it was a very slim possibility, because the way I calculated it out, I would actually end up exactly 1 culture ahead of El Chupacabra, which meant that if El Chupacabra basically ceded any impact that would even be a neutral impact, they would end up winning even after my war against DB Starman. So I think we'll see how things end up being, but I think that definitely now that I'm thinking about it, maybe with calmer eyes, it was way too optimistic of me to think that I had a realistic shot at winning. Like, yes, technically, like, if my opponents didn't have any impact to seed, or if the impacts they seeded helped me, which most of them didn't, if you take a look, but I'll just tell you that right now. So yes, it was theoretically possible. There was a possibility that I could win the game by warring DB Starman, but it was a pretty slim possibility. And so I think that in retrospect, guaranteeing myself 2nd by warring El Chupacabra probably would have been better. But that's not what I did. I was optimistic, so I wore DB Starman. I'm able to get my 2 armies and 2 air forces going like so. I destroyed my labs because there was nothing else I could realistically destroy. I mean, I wanted to keep these oils, especially since I was seeding Impact of Industry next turn. So those were the only things I could really realistically destroy. And I can play reserves for food now. And with this, I was also able to build a temple. The reason I built this was because there's an impact of variety in the deck. So this actually gives me +4 culture because it gives me +2 over the next 2 turns and an additional +2 from the impact of variety I've seeded. Now, there was something I didn't consider when building this temple, though, and that was this Empire State Building. If I hadn't built the temple, then next turn I would have had enough rocks to finish the Empire State Building. Now, I would have probably only... The problem, though, is that would I realistically be able to get anything out of it? I would have been able to get to be strongest, so I've gotten 9 culture out of it. But unfortunately, because El Chupacabra has bow gates, I can't even win on rocks, and definitely not anything else. So it wouldn't have been a very big Empire State Building, only 9 culture, but 9 culture is still better than... I think it would have ended up being 1 or 2 culture more than what I end up doing with those resources. So maybe not, though, actually, because it's only 9. So if I built this, this is 4. Instead, next turn I'll be able to build another oil, which will give me another 5. So I guess it's actually the same. So maybe actually this was fine. Anyway, that does put me up to 107 strength. Chupacabra seeds reveals a crime, at least reveals a crime wave. So they and Sakich lose 3 culture from that. They are, however, able to play a democracy, build a 3rd lab, destroy 2 farms for a temple and a modern infantry, and take an engineering. Sakich seeds reveals a civil unrest that hits no one. Plays elements of that for culture. Finishes the Manhattan Project after building a computer, and takes the first ports. And unfortunately, we can see that DB Starman did set things up very well for themselves, where they actually adapted the classic army, which I think I was thinking of them using Conquistadors instead of adapting classic army, but I think it actually ended up not really mattering. Maybe a little bit, actually. I think I assumed they were doing Conquistadors and not classic army. But I think because of Malena, actually, the Conquistadors would have put them with the same amount. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure in my calculations I had DB Starman at 78 strength regardless, but I'm not positive anymore. And they're able to build 1 stage of the Red Cross. So I end up getting 34 culture from DB Starman, and obviously the Impact of Industry is going to be very strong for me. I reveal the Impact of Variety, which gives +12 to El Chupacabra and Sakich. DB Starman gets +20 from it, and I get +16 from it, so DB Starman does the best, but at least I do the second best, and I got the 3 culture from seeding it. I disband the Knights to build a 4th mine for that Impact of Industry I seeded. Get 3 culture from Churchill. And I disband a unit of air forces. I'm still strongest after doing this, so this just gets me an extra 1 culture from the Impact of Industry. And I take cards for no reason. So before the final impacts, we can see that I am still last, even after my war, but the Impact of Strength and the Impact of Industry will be very good for me. So I at least have... maybe, so I'm not sure if at this point it was even theoretically possible for me to get first after the 2 impacts that were seeded. But at least, you know, even though I'm last right now, there are power impacts waiting for me. So we'll see how things end up. First is that Impact of Industry I seeded, so we can see, obviously, I get +21 from it, which vaults me up to only 1 culture behind El Chupacabra in second. The second is the Impact of Government that I also seeded. This one is more of an even impact. I get a little bit less than El Chupacabra and DB Starman, but I'm still currently in second. But the third is the Impact of Strength. So the first 3 impacts are the ones that I seeded. So we can see, right, this is the situation I was talking about where I do end up in first even El Chupacabra getting 9 culture from Bill Gates, I'll still technically be in first after my turn. But there are 2 impacts to go. And one, unfortunately, is Impact of Culture, which is really bad for me. This vaults DB Starman ahead of me. And now El Chupacabra is only 2 culture behind me. And the last impact is the Impact of Agriculture, which does technically make El Chupacabra tie with me, but that's before the Bill Gates extra Bill Gates bonus, which actually brings El Chupacabra to an exact tie with DB Starman for first, leaving me in third. I definitely noticed some mistakes I made when looking over this game. I think in this game, my mistakes were maybe more tactical than strategic. I think especially with colonization, I don't think I played the colonization game right. I don't think I bid as I should have on the some colonies I should have bid more on, some colonies I should have bid less on. But I think that in some ways you could argue it was unfortunate for me. I mean, I ended up with the last copy of Nice, which wasn't until the end of Age 1, meaning I was behind in military for a while. By the time I caught up in military, I hadn't, that took my attention where I wasn't able to work on culture. So by the time Age 3 started, even though my economy was looking good, my culture wasn't looking good. But most of all, obviously the biggest mistake I made was warring to be Starman instead of El Chupacabra. If I had won El Chupacabra instead, I would have ended up in second instead of third. Even despite, like, all the kind of unfortunate events that happened in the game. So, those small-scale tactical mistakes, I think, are the biggest reason. In terms of strategy, I think I played the game pretty well strategically. Especially considering how strong the strength push was at the beginning. I'm not sure if I had a realistic opportunity to get economy going earlier than I did. So, I think that there were some unfortunate things that happened, and also, obviously, you know, not drawing a war until the end, so I only ended up with 1 war. I couldn't get 2 wars going. The oil was also a mistake. Yeah, I think I just made a number of small-scale tactical mistakes in this game. And even with them, I could have ended up second if I had warred the right person. So, that's how it is. I also, unfortunately, forgot to take a screenshot of the event, but in case you didn't know, because DB Starman and El Chupacabra tied, instead of getting 6 points, they each got 4.5 points. So one silver lining, you could say, is that, because I'm aiming to get first in the group, obviously, like, getting third while one person gets first by themselves, 5 points behind them. But since they each only get 4.5 points from tying for first, that means I'm only 3.5 points behind both of them. So that gives me more of an opportunity to vault ahead of them for first place, depending on how the rest of the games go. So that's one silver lining to this result. Like I said, though, I forgot to take a screenshot, so I can't share that with you. But we will get to see the situation of the group after the second 4-player game, which I will be recording in the next few days, hopefully. So I hope to see you then, and I hope you enjoyed this video.